Well, I'll take Miss Stevens' place tonight. I'm known as Miss Tree. Miss Robin, I think there are some introductions that need to be made. There's some people here I've never seen before, and I'm always around looking you all over.
Well, and Joe is the microphone. Well, Miss Tree, we do have some new people at the table with us this evening. We have two representatives from the State Historic Preservation Office, John Peterson, our CLG coordinator, and Andrew Dial, the grants manager. We also have Ms. Linda Camp from the Wildwood Historical Society. And we may have Ms. Jill Von Gruben as well, but I do
She's
not.
gonna be on Zoom.
I do not presently see her on Zoom.
Well,
And then Madam Chair, oh, she is on Zoom. May I promote Ms. Jill Von Gruben and also Mr. Steve Scott to panelists?
Yes, you may,
Great, thank you.
but there's still a person I don't know who's here.
Oh, and we also,
Right there.
sorry, my bad. We also have our new alternate, Chris Preston, who some of you met at our site visit last week, and he is with us for his first regular meeting.
First go around, pleasure to meet everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to put faces and names together. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Dial, I hope you've been appreciating all of my relatives along your way today. I know that you've passed many of my siblings, even some of my ancestors. So I hope that you have enjoyed them on your trip in here today. I think we need to document who's here tonight, Ms. Robin.
Commissioner Hunzick,
Present.
Chair Stevens,
Ms.
Ms.
Tree
Tree.
is here.
Commissioner Slaughter is not here. Commissioner Hammond is not here. Secretary Roughton,
Present.
Vice Chair Bacher.
Present.
Commissioner Rubus is not with us this week, but alternate Preston.
Present.
And our alternate Quarternick is not here. Our Planning and Zoning Commission liaison, Elizabeth Royals,
Just call me Witch.
Ms. Witch. Are you present?
I am present.
Okay, wonderful. Sadly, our council member liaison Nyan is not with us, but council member liaison Rambo.
I'm here.
And that's what we should call you, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Ms. Tree, we have quorum.
Thank you. I'm looking at Ms. Stevens' agenda here. What's this Wildwoods haunted history?
Well, Ms. Tree, I do have a presentation on that. I was hoping to give this commission a tour.
Please.
All right. Well, let me share my screen. There we go. All right, so Madam Tree, members of the commission. In the spirit of our spooky theme this evening, I thought I'd just give you a generally quick tour of some of Wildwood's most haunted landmarks. Some of you were just at the first, and that is Big Chief Roadhouse. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Big Chief Roadhouse has a celebrated history dating back to 1920. It is located in our historic Pond, Missouri. And this facility was originally built as part of the Big Chief Highway Hotel. That served as one of the largest tourist cottage courts in Missouri back in the day. And it served transcontinental travelers on the now famed Route 66. It was originally 62 cabins. There were originally 62 tourist cabins around our present day Big Chief. It also had a gas station, a large restaurant, and an office. And the unique architecture that you see there is the Mission Revival style. The Big Chief Roadhouse in Wildwood, Missouri is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And the U.S. Department of Interior called Big Chief a highly significant link with the early days of commerce and travel on Missouri's first federal highways. And today it is one of Missouri's or this area's last remaining full service restaurants. However, I bet you didn't know that Big Chief is haunted. This historic roadhouse has some of the most iconic American personalities over the decades. It has been a vital part of our Route 66 in Missouri since 1929, as I noted, and has served celebrities like Babe Ruth and notorious gangster Al Capone. However, the paranormal investigator at 100.9 The Eagle found a video share from a paranormal investigation that happened a dozen years ago, where an investigator reported a female entity told him to go away. And then, Bobby, go away. So let's go back to our more haunted picture of Big Chief. According to the video description, a Wildwood, Missouri police officer had reported seeing a female entity in the second floor window after hours when the building was supposed to have been empty. Haunts of Missouri says the paranormal activity does seem to be centered around the second floor dining area with weird vibes and uneasy feelings. And of course, now that second floor dining area is now a speakeasy. So they do attribute these weird vibes to Al Capone's presence there. And Route 66 News shared an interesting story about a Native American girl possibly being the female entity reportedly seen by many in the area. So that is our first haunted landmark. Okay, second, I stayed out very late one night and took some photography. And this is, no, I'm kidding. But secondly, we have, if I can find my information upon it. We have Zombie Road, located in historic Glencoe, Missouri. Lowler Ford Road, nicknamed Zombie Road by locals, is a 2-mile long road that dead ends at the Merrimack River. With over 100 years of history, this road has many legends concerning it. Tales of Native American spirits haunting the grounds, people who got lost and never to return, and drug deals gone bad. There have been reports of paranormal occurrences with evidence of strange ritualistic type activities. Zombie Road is the source of many urban legends and was investigated in the horror documentary Children of the Grave. During the filming of the movie, the filmmakers visited Zombie Road to see if they could capture the reported ghosts or shadow people on the film. The film was released in 2007 and was shown on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I had, oh, yes, there it is.
By the way, if you want to experience it, tomorrow night, we're having a 7K run walk down there at 7 p.m.
But Ms. Robin,
Yes.
what about Miss Stevens' aunt?
Oh, I was just getting to that.
Okay, let's
part.
hear about it.
Yes, folks say they've spotted the specters of Native Americans, Confederate soldiers, and school children on midnight field trips. Others have seen quarry workers maimed by machinery, the spirit of an old woman, and even a serial killer. The land along Lawler Ford Road, as it originally was called, was a popular place in the 1950s for youth to park their cars. However, and apparently the nickname Zombie Road followed from a rumor that a man named Zombie had escaped a local mental hospital. However, real life ghost hunters like Troy Taylor have delved deeper and they have looked at the real history around the road. And in fact, Taylor has dedicated several chapters of his books to Zombie Road. Native Americans initially used the trail to cross the Merrimack River, he says. By the time the Civil War broke out, the path had become an off-traveled route west. In 1868, Glencoe Marble Company mined the area's limestone deposits and set up a small railroad. Years later, a judge's widow was killed by a train there, but Taylor found no record of a mental asylum, and the nearest orphanage was miles away. Trucks hauled stone and gravel from the Merrimack River along the dirt road until the quarry shut down in the 70s. The road eventually weathered away, and in 2010, Wildwood paved the 2.3-mile path and named it Rock Hollow Trail. It is officially closed after dark, but for one night a year, when the city of Wildwood hosts its Shivering Shadows Run, and you are free to go get terrified to your heart's content.
But Ms. Stevens has documentation that this lady who was killed by the train down there was her second great grandfather's sister, Delilah Hamilton McCulloch. And her husband had been Judge McCulloch in the area. I was just a wee one back then, and they said that she'd been tending to her beans in her garden across the tracks. When she was returning home, she was run over and killed instantly by the cars of the quarry branch of the railroad, which ran from the depot to the marble beds. If you aren't real familiar with today's Glencoe area, those tracks ran from today's depot to Route 109 and then along Hamilton Creek up to Rockwood Reservation. This was right there where Aunt Delilah and Judge McCulloch had lived for quite some time. Their property was part of what had been Delilah's Uncle Ninian Hamilton's Spanish land grant. Poor lady. She was rather elderly, being 75 years old when this happened. Such an unfortunate incident.
Thank you. And Ms. Tree and members of this commission, I just have one more stop on Wildwood's Haunted Tour this evening, and that is the River Craig Mansion. Obviously a very haunted place, according to our director, Joe Vunich. The River Craig is an imposing concrete residence. It appears to have been built by William Gay, the son of the prominent tobacco tycoon. In 1875, it was owned by St. Louis prosecuting attorney A.W. Alexander. In the 1890s, James Broderick purchased the home and did extensive additions and restoration. He commuted into the city daily and built a 385-step stairway from the bluff leading down to his depot at the railroad. The house still stands today, and in fact is owned by one of our most enthusiastic Route 66 volunteers, Roseanne Benson, and has magnificent views of the St. Louis County area and beyond. On a clear day, and I can confirm this, it is said that the St. Louis Arch is visible from the lookout area. And in fact, on top of the roof, there is a 365-degree view, if you haven't been up there. And it used to be at the highest elevation of any building in Missouri. But then I guess a neighbor out of spite decided to build a home just a little bit higher. But this also has a haunted history that unfortunately I could not find a 100.9 internet article about. So Joe Vunich, take it away.
Well, when the property was to be developed, we spent a great deal of time talking with the developer, and he had been in contact with the ownership. Had gone back at least 2, if not 3 times. And all of the owners attest that it is just a very unusual house from construction standards, but also there's just areas that are continually cold. There are always noises in different parts of the house where there is no one to be there. And the day we visited and did the interior inspection, it was quite a place. I never saw anything, but I will never argue that there isn't something different about that house.
And and disclaimer, I did show Roseanne Benson this very haunted photo I took of her house, and she hopes I win the Halloween contest at City Hall.
Joe, where is?
It's off of Route 109. Persimmon, Thornhill, excuse me, Thornhill Lane. So it's down toward Eureka, more so than in, we have half mile from the high school.
It's
Used to be a
just an
driving
amazing
range.
view.
Top of the hill before you go down to the high school.
Up the hill
Okay.
from the driving range.
Kind of up by Hidden Valley, is that right there?
Yeah, it would be across.
Private residence.
Yes,
Benson.
yes. She is our photographer, so you won't see her in any photos for any of our Route 66 engagement because she's taking all of that.
So you said from the roof, there's a 365-degree view, and I'm thinking that you have a 360-degree view and the other 5 degrees is into another dimension.
Thank you for that very kind correction, Dr. Rambo.
You said it's too close to the number of days in a year, right?
Yeah, okay, that's probably
Happens
where
all the
that
time.
came into
Yep.
my, yes, thank you. All right, well, that is the end of our haunted tour of Wildwood. But we thought it would be for the benefit of our guests today. That we may touch on that haunted history.
Did y'all see the speakeasy? Did you happen to get the, in Big Chief, she mentioned it, was hoping you got to see it. There's an entrance through an old timey phone booth in the sort of when you walk into Big Chief, and there's no label or anything like that of any kind, but you do the right thing with the phone and you can go up this narrow set of stairs and you get up into this really gorgeous, I mean, really well done bar and, drinking
Yeah,
area.
they wouldn't let us.
Uh,
I asked. They wouldn't let us.
Oh, yeah.
They're working up there.
We had our Route 66 happy hour there as part of our big engagement event, and it was a very nice space.
Okay, opening remarks. Heritage. Heritage is what we have received from those who have gone before us in terms of traditions, culture, values, and ideals. It is the duty of each generation to protect these, build upon them, and hopefully transmit something better to the next generation. We, the citizens of Wildwood, can be justly proud of our heritage. History enables us to evaluate the forces which have been detrimental or beneficial by reliving the past through the study of books, records, and remaining landmarks, including natural habitats. We gain a deep sense of belonging and an appreciation for the lives of our predecessors, whether they be human or nature. It is all an inspiration. As Ms. Tree, I think that's very nice. She mentioned nature, and that's me. So let's all stand. We have something that we always do, and that's the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join with me this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. David, thank you. And we are now moving on to the minutes from our September meeting. Did anyone find anything that was left out or any corrections that need to be made? Hearing none, they stand approved as by general consent. Ms. Robin, do you have any public comment tonight?
Ms. Tree, I do believe Mr. Scott may have public comment tonight. He did raise his hand earlier. Mr. Scott, if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. All right, Mr. Scott is remaining up. Oh, he is raising his hand. He is going to make us make comment. All right, Mr. Scott, I believe the floor is yours.
He's muted.
I've seen him unmute. Oh, there he
There
is.
Okay, I figured out, I am using my daughter-in-law's computer, so I'm a little rough at this, but so I'm sorry, I can't be there, but I want to welcome our CLG and Moshipo representatives. I hope their visit has been informative and have helped them. But what I'm really concerned about is our Route 66 section through Wildwood. For several years before they built the bridges down in Fenton or Fenton and Times Beach, this was the Route 66, and then it moved down there. And in doing that, it sort of left the businesses along the old Route 66 along our Manchester sort of in a time capsule. It just froze them in time. And so many of them are still there. And it really gives you a good indication of what a country road was, with the shops, the cafes, the hotels, the motels, the stagecoach stops that are typical of the old original Route 66. Not necessarily the neon, but the countryside. And I think it's important that we save these. We're going to lose these buildings if we don't find something that's economically viable for them, and then we promote that and get people that are interested in developing and using these buildings and converting them into current uses. There are several there that are pretty solid and are, I think we can count on for the future, but there's others that are questionable. So I just wish we need help with this, and whatever help we can get, I sure would appreciate. That's my message for tonight. So I thank you very much.
Right, are there any other online attendees who would like to make comments at this time? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Ms. Tree, I do not see any raised hands.
Thank you very much.
Are there any in attendance this evening? Raised hands.
Okay. News from Wildwood Historical Society. We're ready to hear from you.
I didn't really know I was supposed to say anything, but the new calendars we just picked them up this week. So I think I have enough for everybody. Although I think Jill is gonna deliver a batch of calendars next week, whenever she's back in town. And
I'll have about 4. Be glad to do.
oh, but it's okay. I put in flyers for our next 2 meetings.
Thank you.
And anybody can come to our meetings. You don't have to be a member. When you come, you can sign up to get on our mailing list and get the monthly newsletter. In our meetings, usually our speaker is somebody that would be of interest to all of you. Last month our speaker spoke about Black history in St. Louis and brought memorabilia with him. Of course, our library, we've got all kinds of information on the historic buildings. We've got photographs, information on your families, somebody, you're looking at a property. How'd you get one already?
That's right. Ghosts.
I don't know, I blame the witch.
Madam Witch.
Oh,
Madam Witch. I blame Madam Witch.
so I mean, if anybody needs information on any of the buildings or the families that were out here, you can contact us. Normally the museum's open on Monday mornings. I don't think anybody's gonna be there this Monday. I've got a funeral. One of our other regulars has a funeral. I think Martha's out of town, Jill's out of town. But on the back of the calendar, you can always contact us at info at whatever our email address is, info@wildwoodhistoricalsociety.org. And somebody will get back to you, and we can meet you anytime during the day, in the evening, whatever, if you know what it is you're looking for. I know Ellen Radford's here. She's one of our members. She's been there. Can't tell you how many Mondays doing research. So we welcome anybody, anytime. Like I said, you don't have to be a member. If you come to one of our meetings, when you sign in, if you put down your email address, we'll email you our monthly newsletter. Just a matter of adding it to the email list. And that's really all I have.
For anybody that's looking at, like Linda said, your family history, or maybe the property that you live on, you want to see more about it. I mean, there is a ton of information in their library. And there are also a lot of people that have lived out here that are part of the society. And so they have knowledge, they have firsthand knowledge. So it's been a wonderful resource for me, and I've really appreciated all of their help.
Yeah, like I said, we've got information on a lot of the families. My family's history is from out in Wildwood. Even I was born and raised in Richmond Heights, lived in Ellisville for over 50 years now. But my maiden name was Hart, H-A-R-D-T, if you're all familiar with Hart Road. Well, my cousin still owns a family farm. So there's always somebody, and he's active with the society. There's always somebody out there that either, none of us are very young, that either their family, they were born and raised out there, and they know the old time history from out here. You know, that, heck, you guys didn't have electricity out here till after World War II, 1946.
Wow.
We've even got old VHS tapes. I noticed one of your things on here was the J.P. Connell house. They interviewed Jack Connell, JP's son, back in the 90s. As I listened to his VHS tape. If you were Irish, don't move out to Wildwood back then.
If I may, just attest, I did attend the last Wildwood Historical Society meeting. And the speaker that they had was just amazing. It was just a very, very good discussion that followed it. And I learned a lot, honestly, about St. Louis history and some of the museums that I didn't know existed. So I just highly recommend that you do come out to one of their meetings. It's a good time.
We don't meet in January and February. We discovered nobody wants to drive way out to our facility when it's really dark out. And who knows what Missouri weather's gonna, or St. Louis weather's gonna be in January and February. So we don't meet those 2 months.
Thank you. Moving on now to old business. The first item is the Wildwood History Book update. Ms. Robin.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. We are still selling books. I believe we've sold around 175 books so far, just to update some of the numbers that were in the memorandum. We're still selling more hardcover books than paperback books, which is what I expected. So it's all real positive news. We've also distributed a lot of our donated books. I believe about 85 copies so far. We're anticipating giving away probably closer to 100. But we've been getting a very nice reception for those as well. Unfortunately, we did uncover where it came to our attention that individuals significant to historic preservation here in Wildwood were unfortunately not included in some of the book's recognition pages. So what we're looking to do as a department to fix this is develop a sticker with our graphic designer who designed the book, recognizing these individuals. And that sticker will be physically designed to look like as if it belonged to the book to begin with. We're going to mail that to everyone who received a copy of the book. And then we're also going to update the list on page 233 as soon as we possibly can, so that all future orders are correct. So we do apologize that some of these names were missed. We did quite a bit of compilation to try to make sure that they weren't missed, but we think we have a good solution. So if you have any questions for the department at this time, we're certainly welcome to your questions and feedback.
Anyone have any questions on this at this time? Hey, we'll keep selling those books. Madison Valley Memorial Plaque, formerly Old Slade Road. Is that you, Robin, or is it Joe?
That is me as well. So Madam Tree and members of this commission, at our last meeting, we started moving beyond the content and design of the marker itself for Madison Valley and honoring our United States colored troops to the logo plate and QR code plate that would be attached to it. And Graphics has since returned to the department a quote for these plates. They are metal plates that can be installed after the fact to the marker. And each metal plate is estimated to be $65.45. So to install 4 plates, which would be 2 logos and 2 QR codes on each side of the marker, it's estimated to cost us $261.79. However, we're also thinking ahead to the 11 historic markers that are already installed, recognizing each of Wildwood's historic communities. And of course, you know, we have additional information that's not on those markers on our website as well. So if we took that $65 amount and applied that to our 11 historic markers, I have 2 estimates for you. One is taking into account 2-sided markers and having the QR code on each side, and one just has 1 QR code per marker. So the 18 metal plates would be 1,178, and the 11 metal plates would be 720. So tonight, the department requests discussion and action from this commission on whether or not we should purchase some additional metal plates for our previously installed historic markers.
Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Yes, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Tree. It may influence your decision, but the department has taken into its budget development this cost and set aside funds for it for fiscal year 2024. Mission is supportive, it can be funded.
Well, I think, yes, Dan?
Propose a motion to do
Dan has proposed a motion to do this. Is there a
Two-sided.
second?
it. 2-sided ones.
The 2-sided or just 1 per marker?
It's budgeted. Two-sided.
Makes sense to me. I'll second that.
And seconded by Rob. Any other comments or questions on this? We're ready for the vote. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? It has passed.
Thank you, Madam Tree. I do have a second component to this agenda item. So based on the discussion that we had at our last meeting, additional research is required surrounding the United States colored troops and the enlistees that were discovered in this area or that were identified. So the department is proposing to release a request for qualifications to area organizations, including Union Baptist Church, Wildwood Historical Society, the Chesterfield Historic and Landmark Preservation Committee, Babbler State Park, and also our Foss Park volunteer historian, Ellen Reichert, who did some of our previous research, as well as any others that you may recommend this evening, to request that some of this additional research be compiled or done, so that we can have more information behind that QR code that we install on the historic marker. So I've listed several topics that we could perhaps delve into further as a part of this request for qualifications. These topics are in your agenda this evening. Basically, we're looking at burial information for each of the identified listees, and more information just in general about the area, about daily lives of people who did work on those plantations, about the general history of the United States Colored Troops with a focus on Missouri and this area, as well as more information on Elijah Madison and each of the men identified on the marker. And basically, our intent is to identify those who may have some additional research or information already on file, and then hopefully bring all that information together so that we can have a comprehensive webpage associated with our QR code. So at this time, we just like to request some feedback from this commission on some of those questions and information we've been asking. And then also if there's anyone else we should reach out to with this request for qualifications.
Anyone have any comments or questions on this? I think it's a wonderful document that you've come up with here, Robin, and hopefully we'll come up with a lot of good information on these men. Yes, Joe.
And thank you, Madam Tree. The reason we chose our request for qualifications is that we do intend to pay the entity or person a stipend or a fee for this service. This would not be done on a volunteer basis. So from that perspective, we have to follow our rules, so to speak. Cannot negotiate price until we select an individual or entity. Then we can negotiate price based upon the best qualified person or entity to provide the service. So the RFQ is critical to the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
Looking for approval for.
Please.
Yes.
Yes.
What was the
Is that a
motion?
motion? Okay.
For those words.
Well, for RFQ to come up with the additional.
Is there a second? Chris, second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor said yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? It's taken care of.
Great, thank you.
Updates regarding the changes to HPC composition. Mr. Joe.
Thank you. Madam Tree and members of the commission and our honored guests. As you know, back in June of 2022, the Department of Planning began a discussion with the commission members about expanding the size of the commission itself, but not necessarily as we have in the past. In this particular instance, we were thinking about adding youth representation with our success of the Route 66 student task force. Also, we recognize too term limits that extend to our commission, boards, committees, and task force, that oftentimes we're using big resources just to the fact that they term out the commission. And the thought is that with an advisor position, we could then capture that experienced talent resource, keep it as part of an active member of the commission itself. Also, we wanted to extend voting privileges to all of our liaisons, not just to city council. Others. So process was started. It ended with our city attorney providing wording to Robin and I so that we could have something that could be presented ultimately to the commission and then to city council. The commission endorsed the language that is before you tonight. Ultimately, that language in the form of a bill was presented to city council. City council introduced the bill at its last meeting in October this month. And we'll have final passage this coming November 13th. With that, which we'll be able to vote and advisor can be then selected along with up to 2 youth members. Ms. Keefe will be working with the Rockwood School District on the process to solicit the interest from the student population, all of those 2 youth members. And so that'll take a little bit of time. But here shortly, as soon as the December meeting, the department will have something for you on the advisor position, and certainly will solicit recommendations at that time as well. So all is going forward per your direction, and I just wanted to make sure you knew what was happening.
Thank you. Yes, Robin.
And if I may just add on to that, just to clarify, while we'll work with Rockwood School District, because they're such a large district, to figure out exactly how it would work within their district, our application process. This application process is not going to be exclusive to Rockwood School District. It will be available to homeschool students in the area, private schools, and we'll make a concerted effort to recruit members from those places as well. Rockwood's just probably the most complex institution to navigate. So it's just helpful, I think, in formulating the application process that we think about that.
Elizabeth?
Yes, how many student youth are we talking about? 1, 3?
2.
Two,
Up to 2.
up to 2.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. I think it's great that we're going to include the other types of students other than the Rockwood that are living here in Wildwood. And that's the key. They have to be living in Wildwood. And
Yes.
those of us have been around with the student task force representative that served last year. He was excellent. But although he is a student in Rockwood, he does not live in Wildwood. So he is excluded for possibility on this next one.
But we miss them anyway.
Sorry, Elizabeth, I know you were very attentional.
He was an exceptional young man.
He was a great kid. It's a lot of growth in him over the year, and that's what it was all about. Now the JP Connell House.
Again, thank you, Madam Tree. And members of the commission. JP Connell House has been a point of discussion over the last year or more. You know, the commission did a site inspection of that property, house itself. The property and several outbuildings. The owner is the developer of St. Albans, the just in Franklin County, eastern Franklin County, and west of the city of Wildwood. We were wanting to demolish all of the structures and buildings due to concerns about liability, and increase in vandalism problems associated with it. So during that visit, the Historic Preservation Commission made an impression on the representative from St. Albans properties. And they were willing to forego the demolition of the JP Connell House. If the commission were agreeable to allowing the removal of the accessory structures. That authorization was provided, and the JP Connell House still stands. I am in contact generally with the representative of St. Albans property. And they are interested in the potential incentives the city can offer for the development of the property. Dating and restoring the home. They are working with other development interests in the region to see if there is a partner or someone else would want to take on solely. It's been a slow process. I can't say that tangible information for you about that. But as I said in the memorandum, I believe it's a success to this stage because the home is still on property. Secured. Yet to be demolished. So that perspective, doing the best we can, I think, as a condition in the city. So. Finally, just as you know, some of the incentives is to allow commercial use in a residential area, so a zoning incentive, or additional lots in an area that is limited to one house per every 3 acres. So there is some tangible component to the incentives that actually makes the, I think, proposal interesting and hopefully successful. So if there are any questions regarding the house, Ms. Keith and I will be glad to try to answer them at this time. And Ms. Keith was able to find the image of the house when it was being constructed on.
Oh, wow.
Where did you get that?
Where did you get the?
I was looking for just photos of the structure from our last site visit, and I uncovered some historical photos in our digital archives. Yes. So a very prominent builder here in Wildwood, and one of the founders of the clay company in the area built this home.
Yeah.
And it's one of 12 properties that we surveyed in our 2014, 2015 survey effort that were determined by the consultant to be probably eligible for the National Register. In fact, it was probably the one that they sounded most enthusiastic about in that survey report. So anyway, I just thought you would be interested in seeing.
So that can't be concrete block. Do we know if it's some kind of clay or, I mean, like, right, fire clay or something like that? Be interesting to know the construction.
What?
Right.
Well, what I had always been told when we were restoring the Old Pond School, that the same builder that built. Old
Yeah,
Pond
you said that.
School constructed the Connell.
It's a special kind of stucco on the outside.
Stucco, so it's fire retardant. That's the pond school before the new pond school, went to the ground at least twice. Got to the point where it's like, we've got to figure out a better situation or solution. So.
I bet that's an uncommon construction methodology.
There are some very nice architectural features on this house.
And what's the date on it?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the date.
It's in the.
Yeah, I would have to remove it. I think it was 1912, 1913.
When you said it was completed.
Old Pond School in 1914.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be sure. That one, that's really.
I think they would be open to us just starting the National Register nomination process.
Probably should offer that, and at some point, it's a conversation with city council if they do choose to demolish it. There might be certainly be worth considering a purchase of portion of the property. And then they could also then take some tax benefits from a donation as well. Partial purchase.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if they get to keep 8 of their 12 acres for some other purpose, I mean, it might be a cost, a benefit for them.
And again, it's not something we tell a lot of people, but that 3 acre minimum doesn't necessarily apply to us as the city. So we could even do an acre of ground, keep context in the larger trees around it. And still leave them with a development site that's pretty substantial in size.
A lot of possibilities.
Yep.
Thank you. Any
As I
other
said,
questions on this?
It's still there, so I feel like we're
Right.
we've done a yeoman's work on this particular item. Thank you.
Bob, I'm going to refer to you. I know I will not say the name correctly.
Partner,
Thank you.
Well, Chair Stevens, I believe we have comment first from one of our.
partner, my family.
Mine too. My grandma was a partner.
See, yeah, so we argue about that all the time, but the family that lived there was partner. Because I used to fish in that pond, and it was my grandpa's from Freddie. And the partner, the store, partner store, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the people that moved away call it partner.
And that was mine. My grandma,
Yeah.
like in Ditman.
Yeah.
And it was partner.
So historically here, it's partner.
It's all in what you get used to saying,
Yeah, right, but I'm just saying for the local
but we
area.
try to do
that's-
it correctly.
You won't leave this room unless you get it right.
Rewinding back to the Connell home.
Hey, who's reporting on this?
Chair Stevens, we had a comment from one of.
Oh,
our
I'm
guests.
sorry.
Have you looked into requesting an easement on the property? The property owner donated an easement.
We have not offered a option of an easement, nor have we really talked to them about a purchase or some type of acquisition by the city. For the most part, it's a development corporation, and their first response was, well, what more can we do on the property if we were to consider this? But as time has passed and conversations with the representative of the development entity have occurred, it's just, there doesn't seem to be anybody stepping forward. And my concern is that lingers. The threat is greater that might be lost. So yes, if you have some ideas, we're all ears.
I just know that an easement is usually an effective tool for preserving in this situation where something is changing hands and you're not sure how well the new property owner is going to protect the property.
Again, if
That would be
you
one
have,
option.
if you have some information, we'd be glad to take a look at it and share it with commission members.
Sure.
Can you provide a definition of easement? Because to me, it's just, you can drive here or you can put a wire there. And you're talking about some sort of a historical easement, which is a different class. So what would an easement entail?
So the State Historic Preservation Office owns a bunch of easements on historic structures all throughout Missouri. They're usually given out with grant projects where we give out a chunk of change to do the thing in order to protect our investment in that property. The owner signs and donates an easement to us, agreeing to preserve the character of that property for a period of years. So that way the fruits of that, the state's investment can be preserved. Usually in our case, there's when our office did it, they followed a template where it would say things like you could not make changes without the historic characteristics of the structure without asking the state first, our office first. Our office has the right to inspect to make sure that you are not making changes. Things like that. So it's a way of putting a concrete requirement on the property owner that they have to preserve that.
They get money for that. The owner may get some money for that from the state.
Usually with the state, it's part of a grant transaction. So it's part of the grant funding. We would give the owner usually it was for courthouses. We ran a courthouse grant program for a while, but we would give them money to fix their roof, replace their porch, what have you. And in return, they donate to us an easement with authority to ensure that its requirements are followed.
I think we need to know more about that because,
Yeah,
if as long as it doesn't prohibit certain activities like a bed and breakfast or whatever in a place like this, and we get them on the historical, we get them on the National Register, they can get more money and so forth. That might be the way to save this if we can, combine all those resources. So, you guys can look at it further.
As I say, as time later, it's maybe we need to do more and maybe derive the discussion in the direction we hope.
It's not getting any better. The structure is not getting any more sound over time, and you're concerned about trespass and vandalism and so on and so forth. You had the enhanced police presence. I don't know how that works now.
Well, as best as I can tell, the conversations with the representative, they have period, and they do check on it. Right? So as they keep their part of the market, good so to speak.
Is there any more that you are presenting on the park at this point?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, at our last meeting, the department presented to you the two components relative to the more recent addition to Berkner Park, which is Mrs. Yost House, which was built in 2001. As is described then and now, the mold, black mold in many different types, is not necessarily historically significant as it was built in 2001. And that's all of the building materials from that time frame, vinyl, et cetera. There are historic structures and assets on the property. The intent is not to disturb those. The intent, again, is to instigate the removal of the Yost House due to its public health and safety concerns. We did do the second step in the process, and that's been presented to the city council committee that oversees the Department of Parks. That was for mitigation and restoration, not include rebuilding the interior of the structure to make it safe and usable. And all told, if we were to basically demolish the structure, it's about $18,000. We try to basically mitigate, restore, and reuse. It's probably going to be in the range of $150,000 to $175,000. With no clear use of it established at this time. The Planning Committee will make a recommendation which the city council will ultimately make a decision. Any questions about it? Property had mold when we accepted it. There was a water leak in the interim while the matter was. Relatives chose to oppose the donation. It took quite a bit of time to work its way through probate court. In that period of time, there was a water leak. The well inside the basement, and the mold just kind of took over.
I'll add that I think I tried to take the temperature of the Planning and Parks Committee, and it seems clear that there's no stomach for the repair and restoration. It seems to make a lot more sense to just raise the place and make that the much needed parking for future park, because there's no other great place to have the parking. And the only historically significant structure on that property is the barn, and then there's a chicken house, and some other things and so forth that are all in pretty bad shape. So we'll have to cross those bridges as we come to them as well. But the house has no historical significance. It's less than 30 years old, and something like that. It's the third home on the property. And so it's just that it's a perfectly nice ranch, but there's nothing special about it. And the city doesn't want to be in the landlord business and it's really not a great perk for a city employee or anything like that to live in. And so we're probably going to recommend knocking it down. So just be aware. I think everybody probably should be comfortable with that because it's not a historically significant structure.
Any questions at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Robbins.
Madam Tree. Members of this commission, the next item on our agenda is the Essalon Cabin. As you may recall, many years ago in 2015, the city was offered the donation of the Essalon Cabin. But over the Thanksgiving weekend, in the night, the Essalon Cabin was dismantled and stolen. Which has since been called affectionately, because I suppose time instills some affection, the Essalon Cabin Caper, which we get to tell the story of every year at Celebrate Wildwood. Well, fast forward to today's time, and we are now just around the corner from reconstructing this Essalon Cabin. Pattern Ives Consultants have been out to Glenn Bailey's property to assess the condition of the logs. And I think it's to his testament that they are all in exactly the same condition they were in 2019 when they performed the assessment and tagged them on top of the Wildwood parking garage. So that's good news. We have not lost any logs over this time. Honestly, they were very skeptical when they went out there. They expected some loss. And so I just really want to compliment Glenn on his storage, that it is in such good condition. However, we had less wonderful news when it came to the Manchester cabin, which appears to be possibly multiple cabins. We did not find a log within that donation that was of the same size and type as the SN log cabin logs. So we're not going to have a full log replacement from that donation. What we will have is lots of sound logs to be used in Dutchman repairs as we reconstruct the SN log cabin. So it's still a very useful donation. It's just not as useful as maybe we were crossing our fingers and hoping. So the other outcome of that site visit and assessment is that our consultants advised us that given many years have passed, costs have maybe increased from what they were back in 2015 when we received an initial estimate of how much it would take to reconstruct the cabin. So according to Pattern Ives, a more reasonable budget for this reconstruction is probably closer to $220,000 versus what we currently have budgeted. So at the last Planning and Parks Committee, the department did request an additional $70,000 be added to the budget to bring us up to $210,000. And that amount was endorsed by the committee and will be taken to City Council as part of the final budget for approval. So it's not set in stone yet. It does need to go before City Council. But so far, but right now we're recommending $210,000 for the cabin next year.
Bill, what year would you spend the money?
Pardon, sir.
What year would you spend?
2024.
Okay.
Are there any other questions at this time? I did want to note that in reviewing the project schedule that we currently have, if we do want to reconstruct the cabin by the end of July next year, it does look like we might need to have a special Historic Preservation Commission meeting, possibly in mid to late December or early January before the January council meeting to approve the construction documents for bidding purposes. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'll be looking at dates and we can maybe just put something tentative on the calendar and, see if it's needed or not. But hopefully this commission is open to that extra meeting, given that we do usually have a pretty large gap between our December and January meetings. Okay, well then that's all I have this evening. We don't need.
Question? So do you want us to come up with dates at this time or?
Oh, no, I will,
Okay.
I'll coordinate that with. the
Okay,
commission.
very fine. Sounds good to me. And then moving on to the 1857 log cabin that several of us went to visit last week. And who's presenting on that one tonight?
I will present. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, Madam Tree and members of this commission, last Friday, we had a very nice visit to the lovely property of Janine and Dennis Vermel, which is located at 19025 Fox Run Hollow. What you see before you is a house that is included within our historic building inventory and is dated circa 1912. It has had an extensive addition to it. And the Vermels were so kind as to show us this old historic photo of their home from what it looked like before that addition. Probably the most notable feature was the stonework upon the home. And also notable, given the subject of the cabin, it was noted to us that Captain William Hogg was buried on close by to their property. And we did have an opportunity to visit the tombstone. And Captain William Hogg did fight on behalf of the Union during the Civil War with the Pacific Battalion E Company for the Missouri Home Guard.
I have discovered in doing a little bit of searching around on him that he did receive a pension for his time in the Civil War, and that she was able to continue it after his death, her death. So just a little tidbit of information on them.
According to the Vermels, this tombstone is listed. I haven't done the research to determine exactly what listing, but it is considered significant. This was the subject of our visit. This is the log cabin on their property that was used for hay by Captain Hogg. So it was never inhabited by him, but it was instead utilized for hay. The attached structure to it is a dairy or milking shed. And I guess before I take the tour of the cabin, I would just note that there's some other interesting tidbits about their property. The rock formation of the creek in their area, which is Fox Creek, was apparently utilized by the St. Louis Zoo as inspiration for their Puffin Coast exhibit. So that's pretty cool. And they also have a journal, an old journal that contains information about the indigenous people that utilize this area. And in fact, there's been lots of arrowheads found along the creek. This is just their water cistern on the site. And then these are photographs of the property. So this is the house and the barn. And this is facing north. This is a grain silo in the barn, so more northwest. This is their property facing south. And this is their property facing southeast. Getting into the cabin asset. Just to give you information about the potential donation, the Vermels have indicated they're interested in the city utilizing this log cabin either as a standalone reconstruction project or to help piece together another project. And in addition, they've noted that we're welcome to the attached dairy shed, which we'll look at in a minute, the grain silo, the two spires that will be photographed on the barn and the cabin, and any of the fairly extensive stone material that is presently on the property. And their ultimate wish is to demolish the existing structures and rebuild. So the city would be responsible for the removal of these donated items. This is inside the milking shed. And so this is some of the equipment that was present there. This is the grain silo and some of that stone material. This is the barn spire. And this is the cabins. This is the front of the log cabin. Just like closer photo than what was previously featured. It should be noted that there is some structural issues with the cabin. The roof is caving in, which would indicate some structural. And one of the interior walls does have a hole in it. This is actually an opening where the hay used to come in. But that's deteriorating. The inside of the cabin structure has been modernized. There's wallpaper and drywall. Electrical has been wired to it. There's a ceiling fan. But there is some very nice aspects to it as well. And so here are some of the corners on the interior of the cabin. It should be noted that underneath that ceiling drywall, the roof rafters are intact. And then this is the exterior of the cabin. This is the eastern wall. There is a stone foundation of the cabin. This is the gable in front of the cabin. And then this is one of its exterior corners. So we do have some time to make a decision regarding this donation. But Bernals have indicated that they are interested in moving forward with some of their future plans. They do have a potential buyer that may that would wish to relocate the cabin to Illinois, but they would prefer to donate it to the city and keep it here in Wildwood. That was our site visit. Yes.
You know, there was some pre-discussion before the visit. I know that we got to see what it was like. We don't want to pay to store it. We don't want to restore it. We don't want to put it up somewhere and spend the money and have two cabins. So we don't have a need.
I think the department's intention this evening was to let the commission review the information from the site visit and have that discussion. And then we'll provide our comments.
Other comments?
How did the dimensions of these logs fit in with the Manchester cabin, the potential logs from the Manchester cabin? Do you guys, because I have no clue on what we were referring to there. You said there were some dimensional differences between it and the Essen log cabin.
Yes, the Manchester cabin and the Essen log cabin did not have a full-size log that could do a full log replacement for the Essen log cabin out of the Manchester cabin.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yes, but this cabin does have some logs of that size.
So Essen is 18, less than 18 feet, because this was 16 by 18. This cabin here.
Thought we were looking for 16-foot logs. Are we looking for 18?
Go from memory, but I thought the SCL was something like 12 by 16 or 12 by 18.
Oh. We're $70,000 overspent on the Essen log cabin. We don't want to spend another dollar more. So what are we talking about?
Well, certainly, at least the director of planning and parks, let his feelings be known at the last meeting that we can't proceed forward with another reconstruction at this time. Councilmember Rambo can tell you, we've got 4 major projects staring us down. Finishing phase 1 of the internet rollout. Then
I
there's
mean, so
another-
that's easy. We're not gonna rebuild another cabin. So, okay, scratch that one off.
That's not a decision of the director of planning and parks. That's a recommendation from the
No,
commission.
but I mean, based on the information available, it makes no sense from a cost perspective to have another cabin. So then we say, is it worth saving the logs and storing the logs? And is there any money to scrape the logs and put them somewhere and pay storage? Is that a viable alternative?
And what I would suggest is, well, I have some good news. Lynn Gailey, our primary contractor for 20+ years, retired this year, 2023. Coming back.
Oh, good.
So we have a location to store the logs. Haley's Yard, as he's done for the Essen log cabin and is now doing for the Manchester cabin. I'd have to contact him and arrange for him to meet with the Vermeils to see what he thinks it would cost to basically deconstruct it, preserve the logs, and then transport them to his yard on Park Road.
That's the missing piece of information is how much it, because it could, I mean, we could do some of it maybe with volunteer labor, but figuring out the cost to, as you say, clean the logs and stuff. And we would wind up with a lot of short logs because there's a dory and one sound, relatively sound side. There's the milking shed side that has, you could probably salvage 4 to 5 feet of logs times 2, so it's 100 inches times 2. The backside has some repairs and probably some problems that are hidden by an interior wall, and the eastern wall is pretty good, so it's useful. I would love to see us be able to recover it and use these logs in the future, but we can't afford $20,000-$30,000 for it. What I will say though is stone has value. This hand cut limestone, you can't buy it at any price any longer, and they've got a lot of it and it's really nice. I don't know what it takes to clean mortar off of limestone, but that is the juice for this donation. If we can make it happen, it might be good to just have that material, but I don't know how much donated stone we already have. So that's a question we need, answered, and we also need to know what it roughly is going to cost us to take it down and make it nice for the Vermeils so they can do what they want to do.
Well, as you know, over the years, we've collected a lot of different items from demolitions. People have been very generous to the city. We had a great deal of stone from different summer kitchens and accessory buildings and things along those lines. For the most part, we've used most of it up. So we're down to now just small pieces or fragments that the masons tell us there's just not much they can do with it. We still retain it, but so I guess the suggestion I think I'd like to make for Robin and I is let us have a month's time to go meet with Glenn Gailey, ask him to consider going out to the property with the Vermeil's permission and giving us an assessment and estimate of what he thinks it would cost. Basically disassemble it and transport it, store it for the city for future use. One time will I advocate for a reconstruction, $210,000+ It's a hard one to argue for again, particularly when it doesn't serve a purpose like internet to someone's home.
Don't forget the stone when Glenn goes out there and looks, but I want to say thanks to the Vermeils for even bringing this up and also for your incredible hospitality. It was very nice. It was almost like a party. She served snacks and pie and drinks and the whole
It was
thing.
more than snacks.
Yeah, and it was, right, and it was a beautiful. just a
Anyone who
beautiful
wasn't
setting.
there missed.
Yeah, you missed out. Well, thank you very much for that.
And you are, and anyone who didn't have an opportunity to attend, you're most welcome to come out sometime if you like. And incidentally, I'm Janine. This is my husband, Dennis New. He goes by, that's okay.
Okay, sorry, guys. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Has you ever considered looking at, rather than restoring the exactly the way it was and doing something like a ghost building? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I assume it's a framing, so to speak, that's
Yeah.
secure from the elements, but for the most part, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's representational more than anything.
And certainly, that's an option. And again, it's just, have to sometimes talk about reality.
Yeah.
Internet, watershed, Main Street extension, and we've got a whole lot of problems at City Hall right now that is going to cost a great deal of money to fix. Starting first with our elevator. So I think if the Vermeils are willing to let Glenn come out, investigate the cost, that would be to basically disassemble it with care, transport it, store it, return the property to the satisfaction of the Vermeils. And that's something we need to look at. The thing that appeals to me is, as you know, with the Essen Log Cabin, we lost the rafters and we lost the foundation. Those weren't recovered. We recovered the logs. When Robin mentioned the rafters, that's maybe there's something there for us as well. And certainly the Vermeils are willing to let loose of that stone, which I think has a great deal of value.
Yes.
And maybe that's part of our foundation. So
We are in no hurry. So, and having
Came to the right
offered this to the, having offered this to the city, we knew this would not be an overnight decision.
Thank you.
hope you're not referencing code enforcement too.
No, not at all.
Thanks for taking the joke in a good spirit.
You have plans to put something else in this spot and the cabin's gone?
When the cabin is gone, I would like to use that location for my rose garden. And I, because that's my retirement hobby. So, but where the fireplace is located, and that is some very good stone, that's will be the location of our new home. We're hoping that'll be the location of our new. And we did not modernize this log home, our log cabin. I would have never done that. That was the prior owner. Use that as her real estate office.
That's a great wall right there, by the way. It is just something.
I got them all over the property.
Yeah, it's all over.
We had an architect refer to our property as a monument to stone.
Sometime I'd like to come see. I call or just show up?
Just let us know, just let us know and make sure somebody's there to greet you. And it was a beautiful day. Look at the color of the sky.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a beautiful day?
It was a gorgeous
We
day.
took a walk in the woods and I didn't have a single chigger. You're lucky.
Bought a lottery ticket. Madam Chair, the department would respectfully request time until the next meeting to basically arrange a meeting with the Vermeils and Mr. Daly to give us an idea of the cost associated with all of this.
I think that's important.
For sure.
I can have a motion and second to delay any action. It'd be great.
Rob
So move.
Second.
and Alan has seconded. Any other discussion at this point? All those in favor say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? Passed.
And thank you again for your hospitality.
It's a fun day.
The next item under old business is the 2023 work program update.
Madam Tree, members of this commission. I believe most of these items are included on the agenda tonight. However, I will just note that Michael Allen is still working on the archival work for our historic building surveys, which, as you know, is of 43 new properties to be added to our inventory. If you have any questions at this time for any of the items on our work agenda, please let us know.
We could attest from this afternoon that the work is progressing on Old Pond School.
Yes, we can.
Any questions on anything on the work schedule? Okay, then we'll move forward with new business. Before we do that, just take a look. Don't skip over part B. This is not ready for action, but we need to keep in our minds the things that we have on our agenda. And this will help you see we have a lot of work ahead of us. So just, update yourself on this from time to time. So new business ready for action. Robin, Back up to Kansas City.
All right, Madam Tree, members of this commission. We did have an exciting news event for us in recent history, and that was that we were awarded the Outstanding Public Outreach Program Project Tool Community Initiative for the Student Route 66 Task Force. This was one of the 2023 Missouri American Planning Association Outstanding Planning Awards. So it's a very good award. In fact, it's a very pretty award. If you haven't had a chance, you can go look at it. It's over on that wall. But Chair Stevens was so kind as to attend the Kansas City conference with me. We accepted the award together on Thursday, October 12th. And then we went and attended several historic preservation and planning related conference topic sessions. So we took away some ideas as well. But it was a very meaningful moment. I was able to read a paragraph from Lauren Dean's letter that we have read to this commission to all the conference attendees. It was very well received. We were approached by a planner at the city of Crestwood who said, oh, well, I may have to use your student task force as a model for our Route 66. So we'll be following up with him. And I was just told over and over again by many members of the awards committee throughout the day that it was just a no-brainer. They really loved our project and thought it was a very meaningful initiative. So that's what I've got. At this moment, we're working on how to best present additional certificates to our project partners who were so instrumental to making this project happen, particularly the Rockwood School District, but also many other organizations and businesses as well that were just instrumental to so many of our events and activities with the task force.
It was wonderful. We suddenly realized after the presentation that we had a stack of certificates in folders for each one of these organizations that were a part of this. So that's what we're talking about in getting these presented to them. They were provided to us by the association. That was really very nice.
Yes. So I would just like to read verbatim my closing, if that's all right. The department congratulates all of you on this proud achievement for our city, but in particular, those on the commission who served as tireless champions for the task force, attending every meeting of the commission and the student task force, which met monthly, and all of the extra Route 66 Roadside Park master planning meetings, and the additional special events, video shoots, field trips, and award ceremonies associated with it. So I would just like to thank especially Ms. Chair Tree, Janice Stevens, former Commissioner Steve Scott, our Planning Commission Liaison Elizabeth Broyles, and also our missing in action, but spoke up highly this evening, citizen volunteer Roseanne Benson, for this tremendous and meaningful and fruitful lift. I mean, that was a lot of effort on all of your parts, and without you, the task force wouldn't have happened. So thank you for being its champion. And it was an honor to work with all of you on this project.
Okay, presentation from the State Historic Preservation Office. It's your turn.
That's true. I have a PowerPoint.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I apologize. I was trying to track down our clicker this evening. Was coming up short, so I'm just gonna have to be your
That's fine.
click through.
Should we call that?
Fantastic.
So she's doing that. I will say that as the grants manager at the Preservation Office, I get a lot of calls of people asking for money. I heard several projects around the room this evening that could use a good dose of funding. So I have. This is my standard presentation of where to look for preservation funding. I'm not going to talk about our grants tonight. You guys already know they exist. You have an application in. I'm not going to talk about that either. Since it'll be under review. But I will talk about where to, this is the universe outside of what we offer. If you go to the next one.
And we did have a very nice discussion of what they do offer earlier this afternoon, so no fear, we'll be discussing it.
Yes, if you ever want more information about our grants, or if you want me to talk about what we offer, I would be happy to do that at some point. Just let me know when. I'm happy to Skype in. Before I do that, though, our office is doing a reboot to our statewide historic preservation plan. We are required to have it by the Park Service to have an active preservation plan. This is our current one. You can find it on our website with its beautiful picture of the Hall of Waters in Excelsior Springs. This goes through 2024. We are updating it so it will go till 2031. As part of that, we are conducting some outreach activities and some input activities, I'm sorry. One of which we'll be doing a series of input sessions. We'll be hearing some more word about that. We're also doing a couple of surveys. So if you go to the next slide. We have two surveys, one that's for preservation professionals, which you guys are preservation professionals, so we're welcome to take it. I have a few physical copies here if you want to just take it now and give it to me. If not, there'll be a link coming out. We also have one for the general public that measures the awareness of historic preservation around the state. It's pretty short, 9 questions, takes about 5 minutes. If you're interested in taking that one or disseminating that one, let me know and I can send you a link. It's open until January 21st. You can go to the next slide. So on to the money questions. The most common place that I send most people are tax credits. The federal government offers a 20% tax, excuse me. If you rehabilitate a property that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places for commercial use, the federal government can issue you a tax credit for 20% of the money you spent rehabilitating it. Some of the money, it's taxes, there's a lot of fine print. The state also operates a historic preservation tax credit program that is 25%. This is for both commercial properties and for residential properties. So if it's commercial, you can potentially stack the two and get up to 45% of your building expenses back in tax credits. Our office is the main contact point for the federal program. The Department of Economic Development is the contact point for the state tax credit program, but we review the scope of work. Whoever decided to give 2 state departments joint custody over a program. But as may the programs exist, Missouri is one of the top tax credit states for the federal tax credits. In 2021, we did about over $500 million in historic tax credit programs or projects. We usually bounce around 4th, 5th in the country. With usually about 8 it's a lot. It's probably between 400 and 800 tax credits each year. Next slide. Other opportunities, these are grants. People always ask me about grants. Here are a few the places I tell them to look. Missouri Preservation is our statewide nonprofit. They do a lot of great stuff. They offer workshops, they do they do our statewide preservation conference. They do a bunch of great things. They do not give out money, but they have the best list of places to look that I know of. It is my go-to list. They also have a great list of people who do trades and various other things, even down to lawyers who handle the tax credit stuff and accountants that handle the tax credit things. That's what they're really good at. Places that give out money, the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This is a nationwide organization. Also, the National Park Service manages a giant pot of money called the Historic Preservation Fund, from which we receive our bit each year, which we pass on. So those are some places to look. If you go, and the places I'm going to be talking about, most of them are listed on here. Grants come with strings attached, especially federal grants. A few of those. So usually if they come from the National Park Service, they usually only go to properties that are National Register listed or eligible. The National Register is the federal government's official list of what it considers historic. So it gives out funding for historic properties. It goes to properties on that list. Work has to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. You can't just do anything with federal money. They wanted to follow federal standards. I was talking about easements earlier. If you get a grant from a federal agency, preservation grant from the Park Service specifically, they will require an easement to be placed on the property to protect the federal government's investment. The easement runs for a number of years that is keyed to the amount of funding that's given out. There are also various other limitations depending on the grant program. They're all different from the Park Service. Each of these grant programs, by the way, are created by Congress, and Congress can do what it wants. So you just have to deal. Next one. One of the more programs that has one of the more stringent requirements, but is also one of the most popular, is the Save America's Treasures program. This will offer between $125,000 and $500,000 for building preservation. So for a single site, for construction money. It's not just for that, it's also for archives. You can see that there. But the property must be listed on the National Register at a national level of significance. National Register nominations, it can be significant on 3 levels. It can be locally significant, so important to Wildwood. It can be state level significant, so important to Missouri, or to the country. They limit this to national level of significance. We've only got, I think, 40 or 50 that are national level. It's a good number, but it's still not. We've got we have about 2,500 National Register listings in the state of Missouri. So small number, proportionally. Jasper County Courthouse is one of those that's received one. And also, what?
One in every county,
National level significance or?
registered, National Register locations, one in every county, I think.
Yes, there is one in every county, correct. I think there was a program that they had a few years back to try to do that specifically.
There was one left.
We were very happy. We're very excited.
Well, there's actually one county in North Missouri that has one listing. I heard it's been raised.
Oh.
So there is one county that sort of maybe.
Oh.
Anyway, this grant program can only be used once. So if you apply for it to do your roof and you get a flood the next year, sorry, can't apply again. It is accepting applications though. The deadline is December 19th. So if you know someone, we've had a bunch of recipients in Missouri for that. I checked, Wildwood does not have anything on the National Register at the national level. So there are some other places in St. Louis County, but not here. So next one. For African-American sites, I heard you talking about colored troops, and I know there's an African-American history in this community. The National Park Service does run a program for African-American civil rights. If you have a site that's related to African-American history, they write civil rights broadly to make it as broad as possible. That is something to apply for. The deadline for that just passed earlier this month. Or no, they extended it to November 1st. So hurry. But these are usually annual programs that they run every year if Congress continues to appropriate the money. The National Trust also runs a whole bunch of African-American grant programs. So next one. Other underrepresented communities, the Park Service has 2 grant programs, one that is designed to diversify the National Register of Historic Places. So if you can make an argument that your National Register project will diversify your National Register listings, that would be something potentially to apply for. Also, the History of Equal Rights Grant Program gives out money similar to the African-American one, civil rights one. Next slide, please. I get a call about once a month, once every other month about churches. There are a lot of churches in Missouri that need help. I realize that. The National Fund for Sacred Spaces gives money for church repair. It has limits on, it must be an active congregation. It must be significant at the National Register level. I don't think it has to be listed, but it has to be at that level of significance. Until this past month, I could say that we've never had a Missouri recipient, but this past month, they announced that there is a a church in St. Louis that was just awarded a Sacred Spaces grant. So it is very competitive and we're excited to hear that. Next one. For cemeteries, I have yet to find a grant that does cemeteries. But whoever creates a grant for cemeteries will have a lot of applications right off the bat because I get a call for those about once a month as well. We do a cemetery workshop. We did one in Babbler State Park a couple of months ago. John did that.
Yeah, we were at Babbler June, July.
We can teach you how to do headstone repair and things like that. We do 2 of those a year. Missouri Preservation also runs a similar program. They do about 10 a year. So if you want to learn how to preserve a cemetery, talk to Missouri Preservation. Chicora Foundation is also a national organization that has resources in that. But I haven't found one that gives out just money from it for cemetery maintenance. For nonprofits, the Jeffress Family Foundation does money for nonprofits to do preservation work. They will give you a grant to do a historic structure report to tell you what is wrong with your building. And then they'll give you a challenge grant potentially. That's much bigger that will help you to raise money to fix what they found that was wrong. This one also must be listed on the National Register at a state or national levels of significance. That's an easy way to limit the pot of applicants because they would have up to, I think I heard a statistic that 95% of National Register listings are at the local level. So this allows them to limit their applicant pool quite significantly. Next one. There's also the National Trust runs a grant for historic interiors. Small amount of money, but still important. 50-50 match. A lot of these grants have matches. But it goes to the National Trust. Next. The National Trust partners with Main Street. They give out a bunch of other small grants for preservation purposes. These are very competitive because some of them are very broad and will cover a lot of stuff. And if you've got a program that will cover a lot of stuff, it gets a lot of applications. But they do exist and there are things to apply for. Route 66, I know you guys are proud of your Route 66 heritage. Always looking for help with that. We have a Route 66 association in Missouri that does give out grants. At least their website says they give out grants. The National Park Service also either runs or ran, their website is rather confusing on this point, a cost share grant program for Route 66 sites. The Route 66 Association, I should go back a minute. They also run a grant program for neon signs, which I think is just delightful. Next one.
But not a wild one.
Yeah. The National Trust runs a grant program for historic restaurants. We had dinner at the Big Chiefs tonight. We enjoyed it very much. You can actually nominate a restaurant to receive money. Up to $40,000. I imagine this must be very competitive as well, but it is something to think about. T-Mobile is doing grants for towns. They're running this program through 2025 that will give up to $50,000 for development projects. This is not a preservation specific program, but the money can be used for preservation projects. We've had at least three Missouri recipients from this one. Railroads, I was surprised to learn a while back, can be a source of funding. Big corporations like to show that they're engaged in the community, and throwing out money is a way of doing that. I think there is a railroad line I know that runs close to or through here. That would be a place to check. BNSF, I know has given out money for at least one preservation project in Missouri. I get calls from towns asking about roads and bridges and infrastructure, things like that. So I gave MoDOT a call. I said, what do you have that could go for historic preservation? This was their response. They have grants for bridge replacements. They have grants to do transportation alternatives, so not just cars, but other types of transportation, trails and converting rails to trails, things like that. So that's always available. Locust Creek Covered Bridge is on the National Register. It's owned by state parks. They're planning on moving it at some point because the river is shifting. And so they're trying to figure out how to keep it on the register and also move it. I think the legislators gave money to do that, so that's good. Next one. For large scale projects, our sister department, the Economic Development, runs a downtown preservation grant program, which gives a huge amount of money to revitalize the central business district. There are rules around that as well. I don't know much about it, but it is there. For training purposes, we talked about, I know there are a bunch of we get a lot of applications for workshops and such like that. Our grants can be used to fund workshops. In fact, in a couple of weeks on November 9th, we're funding a workshop in Jackson with one of our grants. They partnered with Main Street to do their quarterly workshop. They are bringing in trainers from the National Association of Preservation Commissioners. This is a national level group that is there here specifically to support preservation commissioners. They're bringing a team of people from in there to talk about historic preservation. And we're funding them the fee to do so. If you want to bring in, do a similar project here, apply for our grants. We're also going to be funding one in the spring in Blue Springs. They're actually doing two. We're just awarded them a grant to do two workshops in Blue Springs, which is a suburb of Kansas City. So a bit of a drive, but still happening. The National Park Service has a preservation technology and training grants to do workshops and dissemination of preservation methods and things like that. So that's another place to look. Next. You guys are fortunate to be located in St. Louis County. The Port Authority has a community investment fund, which can be used for preservation projects. The city of Normandy used one to do a historic structures report on a historic building. So they brought in a firm that has expertise in historic structures, and they looked at the building and they said, here's the history of the building and here's how it was constructed and here's the maintenance needs, and basically gave them a user's manual for the building. These are the types of things that our grants can fund that as well if the building is publicly owned and listed on the National Register. They don't have those requirements, so that's something that can be used for. That's what they do with it. I always tell communities that you know your own needs better than we do. You may have noticed that a lot of these grant programs I was talking about have very specific requirements that probably don't fit what you exactly need. A lot of communities have created their own grant programs. St. Joseph has one that is really cool. I want to talk to them more about. Wentzville, just down the road, is that University City as well. They have in each case, the city has decided we're going to make an investment in preserving our historic properties. And so this is one way of doing it. This is always an option.
Thank you for doing some of my initial research for me.
Oh.
This is what I was referring to
thinking
when
the
I
same
said we
thing.
wanted to create a grant program.
You're welcome. Another option, is to create a revolving fund. A revolving fund is a pot of money where they spend out money, but it comes back in, and so it's constantly being replenished. We have one at the state level that we used in the past and still hoping to use it again in the future, to save old buildings. So for buildings that are in danger of being demolished, we would purchase those buildings and then hold on to them until a suitable buyer could be found and then sell them back off again. Again, the fund is being replenished. When we found out that that was very difficult to do because it's easy to buy old buildings, it's much harder to sell old buildings that a lot of people don't want. We turned to use that fund to give loans. And we did that for a while. And then we found out it's easy to give out money. It's much harder to get it back. And so then we turned it to using it for courthouses. And we gave out grants for courthouses for a while. And then that ran into problems, and now we're hoping to use it again. But there is if you are interested in doing such a similar thing, the 1772 Foundation will give you a grant to do a study to see whether a revolving fund would be useful for you. And if it is, you can apply for up to $250,000 as seed money to create a revolving fund. Joplin has just done this. They now have a revolving fund based on this. So they got from the 1772 Foundation. So that is something to look into. Our office, by the way, still owns 2 properties in the revolving fund era. One is the Pelster House Barn, which is down over near Herman. It's one of the few examples of a house barn combo that has some specific German architectural style. The other is the Joplin Union Depot, an old train station that was designed by a very important Kansas City artist. If you would like to buy an old train station that was designed by an important Kansas City artist, please get in contact. Pelster House, we actually just heard things about State Parks today. State Parks is thinking about what to do with that property. They're interested in that as a historic site. Maybe, we'll see. We always, if we can't give you money, we can at least point you directions of places to look for technical expertise. We have some architectural historians in-house that deal a lot with tax credit stuff. They are kept very busy with tax credit stuff. But the National Park Service has a series of resources online that may be useful. They issued, over the decades, they have issued preservation briefs that give very specific how-tos about do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this on specific topics. And if you go online, they are organized by topic. It's just Google preservation by topic. So there's one about how to deal with water damage. There's one about how to do tuck pointing. There's one about how to deal with historic masonry. All of those topics. So before doing a project on a historic building, we recommend checking there to see if there's guidance from the Park Service.
And we have directed you to a preservation brief on log cabins. So hopefully you all did your homework. Okay.
An excellent example of one, yes. I will end with this. These are the things on the left is things that makes me get really excited. This is when the state of Missouri gets awarded large sums of money from the feds. You can see several towns that have gotten that, various ones. At the bottom is the most recent one about the church, St. Francis de Sales Oratory. That's the Sacred Spaces one. On the right is a map that's on the Park Service, is something that makes me want to tear my hair out. This is a map on the National Park Service's website of all of the underrepresented communities grants that they've given out. We have yet to receive one in Missouri. So the money is there. It is very much a patchwork of what it funds, but there is money out there for if you have projects. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Thank you very much. That's scratching going to be going on here, I think. The next item is the CLG annual reporting.
Madam Chair, members of this commission, each of you should have received an email from me last week, I believe, individually tailored with your list of recorded training sessions for this past year's reporting period. And then also your current resume. Please let me know if there are any changes to your resume for this year. If you're new to our commission, please send me a new resume. The form that they do provide us is pretty easy to fill out. They're mainly looking to assess your interest in historic preservation and background associated with it. So it's not something you have to, have this really comprehensive, lengthy work history. So anyway, if you can, please return all these items to me by the deadline indicated. I can't remember what deadline I gave you, but whichever one I did, please return your materials to me and I will include them with our annual report. I have a draft annual report for your review this evening. It's included as part of your agenda packet. If you review it and see that I missed anything or that there's anything I should add, please give me your comments along with your revisions to your resumes, and I will make sure to address it. But just for those of you who are new in the audience, it is one of our requirements as a certified local government every year that we do submit an annual report to the State Historic Preservation Office. And it's part of what keeps us in good standing as CLG so that we can qualify for their Historic Preservation Fund grants. So there is definitely a reason to do your one training per year and send me your materials for inclusion into our annual report. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I could just interrupt for a second. John Peterson with MDNR is the CLG coordinator.
Yes.
And we today went through a list of questions to kind of determine if we're following and doing what we're supposed to do and adhering to the guidelines. And we do appreciate the visit today, Mr. Peterson. Thank you.
You guys do really good work. There's no problems. You have a very strong program. I love Route 66 stuff, so I like that you guys.
66 ran through here, huh? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The next item is the 2024 work program planning.
Right, Madam Tree and members of this commission. We still have some planning to do. I did send to you a few weeks ago the Google Doc with our HPC bucket list. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it and add to it if you would like. However, upon reflecting and also upon attending the Kansas City conference, one thing we heard from this commission at our last meeting is that we would like to work on developing our local partnerships and local sourcing a lot of this historic research that we'd like to do for some of these future projects. And we talked about how to best engage our local community in that. And what I would suggest is that step one in engagement is not to have a list of items and tell people what we want them to do for us, but rather, get to the table together and have a discussion about historic preservation in general, about the local area and how we can best help each other and supplement each other's work, and also potentially come up with some really good ideas for preservation. So I've suggested to this commission this evening, there's a few things we could do. Probably the easiest would be a survey that we could distribute. This is certainly the lightest lift. However, if what I have found in the past, especially if we're looking at things like forming a team around Route 66 or and creating partnerships for future grant projects, things of that nature, it might be a really good idea to maybe hold something of a roundtable or a showcase where we invite local preservation actors into a forum, present what we're doing, what we're all doing, what some of the challenges we're facing, and then have a big discussion around it. I've seen this work in other communities around other topics. Where it really served as a catalyst for partnerships, for discussion, for building relationships. And I think it could be a really great first step towards what we're trying to do with Route 66 revitalization. So with that, we're suggesting that if we do want to do this engagement, we don't hold up the ship in terms of adopting a 2024 work program. We'd suggest if we do go forward with this engagement that we adopt the 2023 work program as our interim 2024 work program, until which time we wanted to update it. It was also, and if I may say it, but it was also discussed at our meeting today earlier that we might want to start thinking a little bit further ahead, like 2-year timeframes. Because the grant fund for CLGs has a bit of a waiting period. The application that we're submitting the funding for it isn't going to be awarded until next summer. So we need to start thinking about things pretty much a year in advance if we're really going to tap into that funding source. So, so the other thing I would just note is we might want to start thinking about planning like 2-year at least work programs so that we can make sure that we apply for these funds. Finally, I just wanted to note that there's a really cool crowdsourcing case study in Kansas City. Chair Stevens and I both attended a session called Beyond Historic Listing, Preserving Underrepresented Histories at the conference. And basically the city of Kansas City has partnered with the Kansas State University Restorative and Equitable Neighborhood Studio to identify historic sites and heritage in Kansas City related to the Kansas City African American community. And so they've created a virtual Kansas City African American Heritage Trail, and much of that information that is submitted to them is actually crowdsourced. Like they have a website that calls for information, and so people contact them through this central forum with potential sites that need to be listed.
And we funded it as a grant program. That's one of our grant programs that we funded.
Yep.
So if you're thinking about other ideas.
So it's a good example of grant funded projects. But anyway, it was it's also a great example of how we could potentially crowdsource information about Wildwood history into future projects. So at this time, we look to this commission for some discussion on the possibilities for engagement as we go forward, and tell us what you think would work best given the projects that we're working on and time and things of that nature. Thanks.
For discussion. Don't all speak at once.
Some of us are doing this since 3 o'clock today, and this may be something.
That's valid. It is 8:30 p.m.
I would say, though, that we could use just an abbreviated list of potential projects to get the conversations started, just kind of, through and so on and so on. Because this is all over the map. There's preservation things we can do with that Connell house and with the, the cabin and all kinds of things. And just having a list, being able to wade through it in your suggested roundtable or how we want to do it, that would be handy.
Well, one thing I would caution against, and any planner would probably agree with me, is sometimes you don't always want to show up with a list. Sometimes you actually want to show up with a blank piece of paper and, really do some listening to see what people are saying.
Can you give it to us though, so that we can?
Yes, I can. I've given you the list, actually. I circulated the HPC bucket list via email. I'll circulate
Okay,
it
sure.
again.
So that
Yeah.
there's probably more things on there than, like, I don't know that the Connell house was on there.
No, but the Google Doc is intended for everyone to contribute. So you have editing privileges.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the HPC bucket list and you're thinking, oh, well, this needs to be on there, just go ahead and add it.
Then it's,
Yeah.
but my lame ideas of what should be on the list might not match up with anybody else's.
That's fine.
It's still fine. Yeah.
That's fine. That's, at this point, we're seeing what everybody thinks we need to put our priorities, where we want to put our priorities. And then we're also considering how we might best involve, the greater community outside this room as well. But I heard a motion to postpone the discussion.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to postpone. All those in favor say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? Postpone.
Okay.
Presentation to do this evening. Is this proper time for us to do this, Robin?
I'm sorry, what?
Is this proper time for us to do this presentation?
Presentation. Oh. Yes, this would be a great time for
Okay.
that.
Of course, we're all very familiar with Celebrate Wildwood's history. And we would like, John, for you to come forward. John Peterson, come forward. We would like to give you or your institution an autographed copy, hardcover copy of our book. And hope that you.
Oh, well, and we actually have a library. at Ship
All right.
House, so
All right,
they put in the
thank
library.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And be looking for a follow-up sticker.
I look in there and I go, oh, I didn't think missing. So that moves us down to other matters. One item, holiday season and vacation planning. Would you like to address that?
Yes, Madam Tree and members of this commission, I am about to spread my wings and fly to Florida for 2 weeks. So that is going to probably slow down some of our historic preservation activity over this next month. And then we have Thanksgiving and then we have Christmas. So in order to manage your expectations, I just want you to know that we're ready to hit the ground running in January. We'll definitely have things to discuss in December. But just know that your planning staff are otherwise occupied. If you do have anything you need me to address, still feel free to send me that email. I will get to it as soon as I can when I return.
Thank you. So our next meeting will be December the 7th, as we all kind of get at the top of the hill and roll down from all the things that we've consumed over Thanksgiving time. And that will be our November and December meeting. And then as we refer to our January meeting, that will be on the 25th. But there may be some special calls in between times. So does anyone have any closing remarks that they would like to make this time? Yes, Elizabeth.
I would like to thank you all for coming.
Yeah,
And
thanks very
staying, and staying here and exploring our city. It's a fabulous new place every day. Thank you.
New
again for
place with a lot of history.
Yes.
A lot of old places.
There's a lot of old places, yeah.
I was impressed by all the layers that the city has. Just driving along the road, you see a log cabin and then you see a 1910 Foursquare and then something from Route 66 hotel and then 1970s and it's just, and then something about the 90s development. It's all there one after the other. You can see how the city's developed.
And lots of trees.
Yeah.
Lots of trees.
Oh, yeah, you
Lots
have
of your
some
relatives.
beautiful creek valleys, which I'm sure are full of archaeological sites.
Oh, yeah, a lot of arrowheads out here.
No.
I have one thing to share, Madam Tree.
Yes.
Most of you know, I was traveling the last couple of weeks, and when Judy and I were leaving the airport here in St. Louis, flying to London 2 weeks ago, we were seated across from an older couple, and they began talking with us and we with them. And I said, well, what brings you to St. Louis? And I said, first, where are you from? And they said, we're from Australia. And I said, what brings you to St. Louis? And she said, well, it's Route 66. And I said, how does Route 66 bring you from Australia to St. Louis? And she said, well, we flew to Los Angeles and we rented a car. And we spent the last 2 weeks driving Route 66. And we ate at your Big Chief restaurant.
Very cool.
And she said, and it was kind of the highlight of the trip. We love St. Louis. We wish we'd have stayed a little bit longer here. And she said, there were a couple of places we didn't like at all. And we got out of Los Angeles as fast as we could. And she said, we would have really liked to stay here for a while. And I said, well, what takes you to London if you're going to Australia? She said, well, our 2 sons are barristers in London. And we're visiting with both of their families and then we're flying back to Australia. But I thought it was an interesting beginning for our trip
Yeah.
to visit with them and to talk about Route 66.
Joe?
And again, just to extend my appreciation to the Vermeils for their hospitality and your patience. We'll get Mr. Gailey out there as quickly as we can, and to folks at MDNR, you're always welcome. Don't be a stranger at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Nothing else? Okay. Well, I have one last remark. Thank you for allowing me, a tree, to be with you this evening. So many of my ancestors, cousins, and siblings live here in Wildwood. They speak of you often. I'm so glad to have been able to meet everyone. Marcus Garvey has stated, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without its roots."
Oh.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
It's been moved. A second? Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Is anyone opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. It's been a great meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Tree.
Thank you, Madam Tree.
Thanks for the decorations and the candy and all that.
Did you see my?
Could be, I'm